Hello and welcome to Emergence, Leading from the Field. My name is Artemis Evangelidi and I am your host. This podcast shines a light on courageous leaders from around the world, leaders who are shaping the future in bold and inspiring ways. Moving beyond the boardroom, we feature authentic conversations with guests, the change makers, the visionaries, and innovators who are leading from experience, purpose, and from heart from the field where transformation takes place. These are conversations with people who are listening deeply, acting boldly, and are doing their part to shape a more conscious and connected world. Our conversations will offer a rare glimpse into how our guests have overcome challenges whilst spearheading innovations that have enabled them to lead from the front lines. Be inspired as our guests share their journeys. Today, I am absolutely delighted to welcome Sarah Connelly. Sarah is a grey area drinking coach specializing in helping high achieving professionals reset their relationship with alcohol so they can lead with clarity, integrity, and full presence. With over 15 years of experience in coaching, education, and leadership, Sarah combines neuroscience, behavior change psychology, spirituality, and lived experience to guide people through sustainable transformation without labels, shame, or rock bottom stories. She's the creator of the 30-Day Power Pause, a groundbreaking program for those ready to reclaim their energy, purpose, and potential, one conscious choice at a time. Sarah, welcome. It is so wonderful to have you here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation.
I guess I'd love to kind of invite you to share with us a little bit and I guess help our listeners understand a little bit more. What exactly is grey area drinking and why do you think it's particularly common amongst leaders and high performers?
So, grey area drinking, very simply, is people that are drinking on a regular basis but are highly functioning. So, alcohol plays a significant role in their lives and it's having negative consequences. But they're not at what we would call the really pointy end of addiction, where it's at the point where they would need to have medical intervention to remove alcohol. And the grey area is many shades of grey. Now, the interesting thing about grey area drinkers is that they can usually stop drinking for a time,
Mm,
and they often do. However, what happens is with the idea in their heads, I'm not that bad, they will go back to drinking and find themselves really struggling after a period of time to moderate. So, the people that I work with tend to be extreme A type personalities, extremely successful on the outside, very high
mm,
expectations of themselves, and using alcohol as a crutch, a support to provide relief from the high levels of stress that they put themselves under and endure from the environments that they work in.
right. Is it something that you find amongst A-type personalities only, or is it a problem that is more widespread?
It's interesting because the more time I spend in this role working with people, the more widespread I see it. And it's across every profession imaginable, from
Mm,
surgeons to psychologists to counselors to firemen. It's absolutely everywhere. And when you say, is it typical for A types, it's generally more common in my line of work because A types tend to be high achieving professionals. However,
mm,
they're also often people that I work with will say they're all or nothing. They live these lives where they're all in, guns are blazing, and that also
mm,
applies to alcohol. Or they can, like I say, they can stop. They can say, I'm not going to drink for 30 days, and they can do that. The problem is that unfortunately, in the society that we live in, there's the narrative that you need to reach some sort of terrible rock bottom moment before you get any support. So we have this group of people, and I was one of these people myself, who's struggling thinking, I don't deserve help, I'm not bad enough, but I couldn't do it
Mm.
on my own. So I've become very conscious about creating groups of like-minded people who don't feel they'll relate to the AA environment, but who don't feel like they need to or want to go into a rehab, to work in a group environment with people who are choosing this lifestyle and are prepared to do the work that's needed in order to change their relationship with alcohol.
Right. And what have you found has been the catalyst for people? What's that defining moment where they just say, right, I want to change the way that I'm living my life?
Well, it's quite fascinating because that point
Mm.
is different for every single human. So, at the really kind of what we call light grey area, people have recognized that it's holding them back in some way. Maybe they want to
Mm.
get a promotion or start a business, or they want to be a better parent. And it's relatively, well, it's extremely proactive, let's put it that way. They've decided alcohol's holding me back for whatever reason, and I want to change. As we move down the spectrum, there are people that are suffering health consequences, potentially having arguments with their partners and children. They're feeling
Mm.
like they might need to hide their drinking a little bit. And so we
Mm.
get further down the spectrum, and my rock bottom moment was very much, I don't want to die feeling like I've left anything on the table. And when I really leaned into that, I was like, I can't drink. Drink is the one thing that's really getting in the way. And I don't want to live the rest of my life thinking, what if? Kind of that was my rock bottom. I didn't fall out of a
Mm.
taxi or smash my head or anything like that. So, and really, what I have found is the more motivated someone is to the positive benefits of quitting alcohol, the easier it is for them to remove it. So that's why I'm really passionate about what I do, because I want to catch people before it's a have to. I have to stop
Mm.
drinking, or my wife will leave me. I have to stop drinking, or I'll lose my job. I really love working with upstream, proactive, thoughtful, goal oriented people who are proactively choosing it before it gets worse, because it does get worse. There's no two ways about it.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. So, what do you say to the people that come to you and maybe on the fence and say, "Well, I only have a couple of glasses of whatever with my meals every now and then. How is that a problem?"
Well, invariably, those people don't come to me
Mm.
because ultimately, I've tried to make my messaging very clear. And if somebody's on the fence, they're not going to come and seek my support. And it's very much not my job to persuade someone to stop drinking. If somebody's happy
Mm.
with their drinking, I have no judgment on that. I think, wonderful. The thing is that it's only a problem if it's a problem for the drinker. That's how I see it. If it's a problem for you, it's a problem
Mm.
for you. Whether you're drinking one glass of wine a week or 10, it doesn't matter. But if it is inside causing you anxiety, stress, you're thinking about it often, you're feeling regret, then that to me or to that individual might be enough of a problem to actually come and talk to me.
Wonderful. And the reason I asked you that was because you've just given a beautiful explanation and a bit of a narrative as to what people might be feeling and experiencing, but haven't even turned their minds to the fact that it's alcohol that's causing you to feel this way. So, no, thank you for that. That's fantastic. So, I see you have this 30-day power pause program. What makes this program different from say other detox or programs that are run um, to help people
Yeah.
quit drinking?
Well, the first thing is the curated groups. So,
Mm.
as I said earlier, I very much focus on creating groups of like minded people that are at a certain point in their lives where there's not a lot of issues other than the drinking, if you want to put it that way. They're usually at the
Mm.
top of their game. They generally, I'm working with people over 40. So I find that they're a lot more motivated. They have a lot of skills already. So many of them are leaders and have a lot of ability to manage teams, to be aspirational in there, and they want to be aspirational. So that's the first thing, curated groups. The second thing is small groups. So I've worked for organizations that have 50, 60, 70 people on a Zoom screen. And I think when we're working with this particular thing, I personally like to get to know everyone and be able to read the room on the screen because it's very challenging at times. So I keep the
Mm.
groups small. And I think for me, the lived experience is so important because I have walked the path. I know all the excuses. I know all the roadblocks. I know all the challenges that people face. So my lived experience is probably more important than my qualifications. I
Mm.
understand at a very deep level how it feels to be stuck in that cycle, and most importantly, what it takes to come out of it. And I also weave a lot of really, I use the word spiritual lightly because everybody has different, uh, what's the word, um, definitions of what that means.
Mm.
But my greatest passion is getting people to learn how to trust in themselves, learn how to build the resources within so that they're not constantly looking outside of themselves to fill something, which is ultimately what we're doing with alcohol. So
Mm.
uh, I often say that, removing alcohol is not really the most important thing. It's a gateway to actually tapping into an extraordinary personal growth journey. And I genuinely feel that anyone that has a problem with alcohol has been given a gift of some kind because it is a call, it's a tap on the shoulder to say, here's a growth opportunity for you. Are you willing to lean in and walk towards that? And that's where I come in and guide them.
Mm. That's amazing. What did you, in this process, you said it's a transformation and it's an opportunity for growth. What did you discover about yourself going through this process and when you shifted your relationship with alcohol?
I had to learn patience. That's
Right.
probably the number one thing that I had to learn, and it wasn't easy. I was
Mm.
a rusher, I was a doer, I was a busy, 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 racing around, creating and building, and it was an unsustainable way of living for me. And so I had to learn patience with myself. I had to learn patience with the process. And the second thing was I had to really develop a deep sense of self compassion. I was a brutal critic to myself. I used to beat myself up on a regular basis, and I didn't realize I was doing that so much. So when I removed the filter, which was alcohol, I was forced to really take a look at the landscape of my life, internal and external, and with patience and compassion, slowly start to create shifts that were going to support me long term. Because so much of what we do in today's society is quick fix, quick fix, quick fix. And
Mm.
I realized quite quickly that with this process, that was not going to work. Um, so we talked before we came online, we talked about presence. And I hadn't really been present for a lot of my life, not just because of alcohol, but for other things too. And
Mm.
being present can be quite scary because you have to face the reality of your life. And many people
Mm.
are afraid to do that. It's actually the most liberating thing ever because you then take responsibility, acceptance, and then you can start to create change. But so I'd say patience, compassion, presence, and most beautifully, I think, really getting to know and like myself again.
Mm, mm. No, absolutely. I've one of the things I have found in my own career and working with people has been that people really struggle with the concept of self-compassion. They
Mm,
find it really scary at first, and there are obviously there's a whole story there behind that, and you and I, um, face that and know what's hiding or what's lurking in the shadows. But what are some of your tips for really embracing self-compassion
mm.
that you could share with our listeners?
Yeah, well, first of all, if you haven't practiced it before, it does feel very uncomfortable and unnatural. And just because of that, there's a fear because it's the unknown. But what I find with my clients, pretty much all of them, is you say self compassion and they go, "Ugh," particularly with the type of people that I work with, because they confuse it with self indulgence. And there's a
Mm,
massive difference. If you say self-compassion, immediately they think, "I'll lose my drive. I'll sit on the couch and watch Netflix all day. I'll eat donuts," and that's self-indulgence, which is an entirely different concept altogether. So the first tip that I give people, because people often don't realize they're even being mean to themselves, is to start listening and to see if they can give that inner voice the day off, just as a
mm,
practice. So wake up in the morning and say, "Today, my inner critic has the day off." That way, they start to notice when that voice comes in that's not kind, and they can be curious about that, not judging, just curious. For many people, that exercise is a real eye opener because they don't even realize how critical they're being. And if you think about the carrot and the stick, most people are living their lives, with the stick. Come on, be more, have more, do more. You're not good enough. You're not good enough parent. You're not a good enough leader. And unfortunately, well, it's not unfortunate, it is what it is. That only works for a short amount of time. And when I say a short amount of time, I mean maybe 20, 30 years that someone can live like
mm,
that. But by the time they're in their 50s, they're burnt out, they're exhausted, their relationships in tatters, and they're drinking to just get through the day. So
mm,
self compassion is not giving yourself what you want, it's giving yourself what you need. And in order to learn that, you need to be present. So we have to get rid of the filters. It's a beautiful process if people are really up for that. And in actual fact, all the research shows that people who are self compassionate are more successful, are more happy, are more balanced, are better leaders. Because if you're mean to yourself, chances are you're not being terribly nice to the people around you either.
yeah, absolutely. It's interesting the research on self-compassion. I tend to go down research rabbit holes every now and then, and
Mm,
I was doing some work around this, and the research shows that when we go into shame or when we go into that self-flagellation that you spoke about, we actually shut down the learning centers of our brain.
yeah.
And so we can't learn from our mistakes. We can't tap into that growth mindset. In fact, we just set ourselves up to repeat these habits and repeat these patterns again and again and again. Whereas self-compassion actually opens the learning centers of the brain. And so it allows us to say, right, well, okay, as you said, not judgy, with curiosity to say, right, well, I did this and that was the outcome. I want a different outcome. How can I learn from this and how can I take this and move forward? And I think that that's such a powerful link for people to understand that if you want to break a habit, and it can take up to 200 and what is it, 260 something days to form new habits. If you want to break a habit, you've got to start looking at yourself with kindness and with curiosity and without judgment. And we're all human. We don't get it right all the time, but when we try our hardest and we do our best in that moment and we do what we think is right for us in that moment it was okay. And I think that's the gift of presence. So, what are some of the tools that you use? What are some of your tactics for coming into presence? And what do you share with the people that work with you?
So again, with this particular kind of audience that I work with, if you say meditation, there's a and a lot of people that I work with have ADHD, which is very often
Mm,
the case for people who ultimately end up being addicted to certain substances. So the idea of meditation is challenging, let's say that. Much as I, would definitely recommend it to as many people as are open to it, I also find that some people can find it very confronting, and it's just not something that they can do with ease. So I
mm,
work very much with present moment awareness, just simple things like when you're taking a shower, just breathing, being present, feeling the water, just getting familiar with what it feels like to be present. Because ultimately, that's what meditation is. It teaches us to get familiar with how it feels to be present. And building that familiarity can happen in a multitude of ways. It can happen when you're walking, when you're running, when you're hanging the laundry. It doesn't have to be sitting in the lotus position for 20 minutes. The breath is really key. Anyone can take long, deep breaths, and that is a great way. And my favorite one, which I teach all my clients, is to get their hand. I am here now. I am here now. So you get the sensory connection. If you do that
mm,
5 or 6 times, it really reminds you that you're in the present moment. I also recommend things like ice baths. I'm a massive fan of the ice bath, and that, if nothing, that gets you pretty present. And it's a wonderful space in which I just do my deep breathing to just bring myself into
mm.
that, into the body. Those are a few of my tools.
Mm, I love that. Yeah, the tapping your thumb and your fingers together to get yourself present, and also the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is such a powerful way as well, isn't it? When
Yes.
you just say what 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear,
Yep.
or whatever it is. Um, so in across your varied career and all the beautiful things that you've had the opportunity to step into and nurture and create as you've come to this point in your life, what what has defined you as a leader in this space? What are the qualities that you think are the most empowering to enable you to do the work that you do, because you're holding space for so many people?
Mm. I would say vulnerability is probably the number one quality.
Mm,
I'm completely at peace with my journey. I have nothing that I'm hiding. I share my story, I share my challenges, even my day to day. There's times when, like you say, I'm a human being. So, do I get stressed? Yes. Do I get angry? Yes, of course I do. Um, but to your point earlier as well with self compassion, that what I've learned, which has changed my life really, is that when those thoughts do come up, like let's say it's an emotion, guilt, shame, whatever, I just allow that to be there. What I used to do, and what people often do at the beginning, is they feel shame and then they add the second arrow, which is what, in Buddhism, you've got the first arrow, which is the pain, and then the second arrow, which is to create a story about the pain. I shouldn't be
yeah.
feeling it, it shouldn't be there.
Mm,
Um, so
mm,
that certainly, it's like, you know, I have clients that go, I was beating myself up and I know I shouldn't beat myself up. And I'm like, but you're beating yourself up for beating yourself up. Just be with the fact that sometimes you're going to beat yourself up. That's the more we
yeah.
accept, the more it dissolves. So I think I've gone a little bit off track on your question. I've actually forgotten what
No,
you
no, it's
asked.
great. It's great. Nothing is off track, right? It's all completely related. No, absolutely.
Off on a little tangent there, but
Mm,
oh, we were talking about leadership. Yes, so vulnerability is I think my superpower, because for a
mm,
long time I was holding so much in and so much back and trying to present a certain image out to the world, trying to fit in with
Mm,
an environment that didn't support my nervous system, my mental health. Um, and also, I think listening to that and being very conscious that every single person, as you said earlier, I believe is really doing the very best that they can. And so, as a leader, my job is to create an environment for them where they feel safe, where they feel heard, where they feel seen, where they don't feel shamed, where they don't feel judged. Because within that environment, you can plant the seeds for growth. Um,
mm,
so I think that's probably, yeah, what I would say.
mm. We we live in a society that has, I guess, a range of wonderful qualities and leadership traits and playing out every day in terms of how how our society runs and the opportunities that we have and the ability to explore and be curious ourselves in our own roles and responsibilities. And the flip side to that is that we also live in a society where addiction to many things is
Mm,
rampant, including social media and so forth. Um, if you had a magic wand and you could wave that wand in any way that you wanted and transform our societies today, what would you do?
I would, I would remove all programming from every single human being
Mm,
and allow them to really tap in to who they really are. I believe we're all fundamentally the same. We all want love. We all want peace. We all want to feel connected. We all want to feel safe. And it's just all these layers and layers of expectations and belief patterns and ego and all those things that come in that shield us from actually trusting and being who we really are as a species, if we want to call it that. At the heart of every single human being, I believe there is just goodness. And so I would get rid of all the other junk and get everybody living from that place.
I love that. What a fantastic use of your magic wand.
I think it
Um,
would take a while, but
yeah.
I had the wand, so I was going to use it.
If I mean, if that was to happen, that would be a very interesting experiment, I think, for humanity to see. You know, arguably, that's how we all started, and then
Mm,
and we're all born with that, and then we acquire the stories and the
mm,
narratives that shape the way that we show up. And then it's not only what we've acquired in our homes and in our during our childhood, it's then our schools and society and our jobs and the images and the personas that we project out there. Is trying to pull that back and stop for a minute. And this is where the question of emergence comes in for me. It's
mm,
what happens when we step into that field and just allow what wants to emerge,
mm,
right? And what is that transformative power can take place when you just hold space for yourself to explore emergence. And I
mm,
guess the work that you do really is allowing people to step into their own fields and allow for the new to emerge for them.
mm,
What have you seen as some of the qualities that emerge for your clients when they
mm.
start doing this work and they're in that field?
It's such a great question. And the thing that comes up for me the most, and I say this to people when it happens, is I see the light go on. You know, when I first meet people, there's really very little light, if any. They're really caught in their minds. They're constantly in inner conflict, fighting within themselves. and then you see the light go on, and that is the emergence that I look for, because once it's gone on, you can't turn it off again. It
Mm,
might dim a little bit, but once they've discovered that there is a very different way to live, and that is an opportunity for every single person, and they see the potential in that, then that is where the emergence really starts to happen. And it can happen at different stages for different people. I'm always working on what's the one thing I can say that's just gonna ping. If I find it, I'll be a multi-millionaire. But there's not one thing. It's different. I'll say something that I think's pretty ordinary, and someone will go, boom, wow. And then I'll say something really what I think is very profound and amazing, and people are like, yeah, whatever. So you never know what's going to work for different people. But I think there's potentially, there's definitely a fear for people. It's the fear of the unknown. What would it
mm,
look like if I really trusted myself? What would it look like? What would I have to step into? What would I need to get rid of? Lots of big questions come up for people, and the problem is that, as I said right at the beginning, people create urgency around that, and there doesn't need to be. It's a very slow, gradual, organic process of
mm,
exploration. Um, and I think, the ultimate goal for all of us is to reach a point, as I said again right at the beginning, I have everything I need, and I don't need to go here and get this in order to feel at peace. I can still go and eat a donut, but I'm doing it
mm,
consciously, not to fill a void. It's not
mm,
that we don't
mm.
get to want things or strive for things, it just means that we're doing it from a very different place, which is conscious awareness and presence, and oh, let's see what happens, without attachment
Yeah,
to the outcome. So it's a very
yeah.
different way of living.
Mm. What, how does in, I mean, there's, we've talked about presence and we've talked about connecting in this way and coming back to our centers and coming back to our core and allowing ourselves to explore and allowing the emergence to take place. Where do you, how does the spirituality part come into this work? You said before spirituality has so many definitions and it means different things for different people. How do you weave it into the work that you do?
It's, to me, spirituality is coming back to self. If and if you believe, or people believe as I do, that the self is pure and good, and in all coming from a place of good intention, then to me spirituality is not out there, it's in here. And however you get there doesn't matter, whether it is following a religion or believing in the energy of the universe, whatever it is for you, doesn't matter. But what is most important is an understanding, not just intellectually, but also within the body, that everything you have is here. Nothing outside of you can fix. Not a person, not a job, not a Ferrari, you know, because ultimately all of those things do work for a little bit of time. And then it's like, right, I've got the Ferrari, what do I need next? And it's this constant external focus. So spirituality for me really means going inwards, and getting familiar with and learning to trust that the peace that we're all seeking through those things is actually inside us.
Amazing, beautiful. There's so many different things to explore, and gosh, I could talk to you about what you're doing for hours. It is just fascinating. Um, I guess one question I have for you, and this is more of a practical question. You know, uh, alcohol is everywhere, and it's ingrained in our cultural things, it's ingrained in society, it's ingrained in celebrations and explorations and, you know, gifts, and it's everywhere. It's something that you can't avoid seeing or finding. What are some of the tools that you give your clients to help them navigate that?
It's such another great question because it's arguably one of the biggest challenges that they face because the
Mm,
environment doesn't support being a non-drinker, and our environment is so important, as you would know, like what we're surrounded by, we get drawn into. So there's
mm, mm,
again, it depends on the individual. For me, I decided to throw myself at it and just go and do everything I'd always done and be fun and enjoy
right.
it and really embrace this lifestyle choice. I told people I didn't care. I was like, this is what I'm doing and I'm really happy. And I was. So being very transparent about it was my strategy. Others, particularly people in professions like doctors, and there's other things
Mm,
at stake. So there's the inner attitude, which I always
mm,
encourage people to focus on what they're gaining, not what they're giving up. And then there's strategies for how to share with people without lying that you're not drinking, how to really make it a tiny conversation, not be like, oh, I can't drink and poor me. Because the minute people think you're unhappy, they'll go, just have a
yeah,
drink, mate. Just have it, it's fine. So
yeah,
there's very much lots of little tools and strategies for navigating social environments. Do I have to go? Do I want to go? Do I enjoy the company of the people that are there? Asking
mm,
yourself those questions, having exit strategies, driving. I mean, there's so many different things, but ultimately, if they want it enough, which is so important, if you want to remove alcohol, whether it's for 30, 60, 90 days, or however long, if you want it enough, the how will reveal itself.
yeah,
If you're on the fence, then you will. It's like the crabs in the bucket story, where the crab's trying to get out and the lid's not on, and the guy says, well, I don't need a lid, the other guys will pull it back in. It's that. And so it
yeah,
does take a very unique and special type of person at this point in the evolution of people going alcohol free. They're what I call the
mm,
early adopters. It takes an extra amount of courage, but it also absolutely, you need to have people around you doing the same thing. Otherwise, the crabs
yeah,
will pull you back into the bucket.
yeah. No, I love that's such a powerful analogy, and it's the same thing we always say, find your tribe. Well, that
Yeah,
applies to all things,
yeah,
right? And the people that you have around you, if they're not holding you, giving you space and helping you be the best you and allowing you the opportunity to allow what wants to emerge for you to come
yeah,
forward and what
yeah,
the new iteration of you looks like, then the question becomes, are these the right people to have around you? And you said it earlier, I often say to people, and I mean, this has been my experience as well in my life, that eventually some people will fall away, and that's fine. And sometimes you find yourself not being able to be in the presence of certain people. And it's not because there's anything wrong with these people or they're doing anything that's any there's no judgment there. There's just love and kindness. But it's no longer a frequency that resonates with yours.
yeah,
And so, you find that your time where it's spent is so precious and important. And that time can either lift you up and give you
mm,
some incredible opportunities to challenge your own assumptions, experience something new, grow and evolve, or it can bring you back and keep you into that or suck you back into the
mm,
bucket, as you say, which I say is, that unconscious vortex of
yeah,
humanity where that collective is just moving along at a certain pace and
mm,
there isn't clarity or curiosity or the ability to sit in presence and just stand in presence and say, what am I doing? Where am I going?
mm,
You
yeah,
know, and
yeah,
I think when you come to that crossroads where you question yourself and you say, well, hang on, how did I end up here? And what's next for me? Um, that can be either very empowering or quite scary,
Or
depending
both.
on how far, or both, depending on how far down the track you are. But so what's emerging for you now, Sarah? What do you sense coming in for the next phase of your own evolution and growth?
I was thinking about this before, and I think I've really stopped projecting too much what will be, because I am of that personality type of just chasing after the next thing. And so I've really let that go, which has been very challenging, but very uh, has forced me to grow a lot in a good way. And there's so much faith that I have now, not in the traditional sense of the word, but just faith that the
Mm,
right people will come into my programs because of the way that I speak about them. Um, and the company, or whatever, my business will evolve very slowly and very organically if I keep the intention really clear of as to why I'm actually doing this, which is easy really for me. Um, and for me personally, I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm just open to whatever comes, and I really believe that when we're in presence, it doesn't matter really. It will all just
mm.
evolve, and you do the right thing in the moment, and everything else kind of takes care of itself.
I love that. It's the challenge and the beauty of embracing the unknown, which
Mm,
is scary because we search for certainty and we want to know what's coming next so that we can prepare. And to be fair, that's not so strange because our brains are predictive brains. That's the way the brain works. It takes what's come before and what has transpired before and what the outcomes were. It says, right, well, this is what happened then.
mm,
Therefore, A, B, and
yes.
C, and here we go.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's useful. Some shortcuts are great when we're doing things, but other times it gets in the way, and it's such an impediment to being able to allow and sit in presence and allow the emerging future to unfold, knowing that it's in your highest good and that it
Mm,
has, your best interests at heart, which is the faith. I assume what you were referring to, which is the faith in the outcome that it will all be okay.
yeah. And it's so counterintuitive because of your very point that we are prediction making machines, and we are so
Mm,
conditioned to have a plan and have a goal and have the steps and follow, all the right things. But funnily enough, and I'd heard this many years ago and thought, what a load of rubbish. But, that sense of just be here doing the right thing in the right moment and everything will unfold, and it actually works. Who knew? I'd been fighting that for so long. I've got to have a plan. It completely goes against what we're taught and what we do in the Western
mm,
world. And yet
mm,
it is so liberating, and it actually works, believe it or not. So just letting go is
yeah.
and not letting go in a sense of not caring, but just accepting and allowing and letting the attachments go leads to the most extraordinary shifts. What you thought you
Mm,
want, you realize you don't want. What you
mm,
thought you don't want, you realize maybe that's right for you. And people say to me, I'm going to be bored if I don't drink. I'm like, how can you be bored? You have the most extraordinary machine in your head and the most extraordinary planet to live on and experience. It's not possible to be bored if you really lean
mm.
into that. And there's never a dull moment, right? When you're present.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's that whole thing of just let go of expecting a particular outcome. You still
Yeah.
put things in motion, you'll still have, I mean, for businesses, we have business plans and we do strategy meetings and we map out where we want to head and where we want to go and what we need to achieve, and the board has to approve it. And, all
Mm,
that stuff is fine. All of that stuff is valid and amazing and fine. But when you're doing the planning, if you're not sitting in presence
mm,
to allow that conscious tap on the shoulder that you referred to earlier to say, hey, here's an idea you hadn't thought of.
mm.
You kind of
Yes.
miss the beauty of being able to move forward, and I think that's what every person is creative, but every person who has acknowledged that they are creative and has tapped into their creativity, that's the one thing that we all have in common, where we say, I'm not attached to this outcome because
Mm,
there could be something else that's coming or something else that wants to take shape and take form, and if I close myself to that, I'll never see it, I'll never find it.
yeah. That's so true.
It's
And you're disappointed all the time because things invariably don't work out as you plan. So,
That's it.
having that attachment generally leads to disappointment. And if you're not attached, you never get disappointed.
That's it. Absolutely. Well, Sarah, it has been absolutely wonderful speaking with you today. I know we could keep going for hours. There's so much more to say, but I will share all your details
Thank you.
on the channel. But if people want to reach out to you and have a chat and just get to know a little bit more about what you do and how you can support them, what's the best place to find you?
The best place is just sarahconnelly.com.au. And there's all sorts of resources. There's my writing on there. You can reach out to me, contact me. So, yeah, just sarahconnelly.com.au.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for being on the podcast and for sharing your beautiful wisdom and insights, which I'm sure our listeners will value greatly.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really had fun today.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sarah.